So which are the best weapons to use on Emilie? This video is just going to be a guide for which polearms are the best for Emilie to deal more damage. We're just going to be ranking all of the polearms in the game in a tier list based around which are the best for Emilie. But before that though, let me explain what she needs on her weapons so we all know based around what I'm ranking these weapons. So first of all, Emilie is generally going to be a sub DPS and she's going to be dealing dendro damage and be played in like mainly burn-in teams. We're going to play her with a couple other pyros and then support or whatever. But in general, what you're going to need on her weapon is going to be pretty simple actually. Her burn-in damage is not really going to be that much. She's still going to deal burn-in damage, but it's not worth building elemental mastery over that much damage. So building just the normal DPS stuff is just going to scale much better than building elemental mastery. That means you'd want to mainly focus on getting attack and then crit rate and crit damage for Emilie. Then elemental mastery is just going to come after them. But generally building her with the normal like casual DPS stats are going to be much better than building her with like a full elemental mastery build. Yes, she's going to benefit from elemental mastery, but the normal DPS stats are definitely going to scale much better. Oh yeah, and damage bonus is also going to be pretty good, but elemental mastery is not really going to be the desired stat. So to be honest, simply you just want to look for your normal DPS stats and that's it. With that being said, let's move on to the tier list and rank the weapons. So starting off with the 3-star options, we have the white tassel. It's going to give you a cool amount of crit rate, but the low base attack is not really going to help. It's definitely going to hold this weapon back a lot, so I'd say it's probably going to be C tier. You definitely don't want to use it just because of the low base attack, and Emilie likes high attack weapons. Halberd is just attack and then the passive is kind of whatever. Probably C tier too. And then black tassel is just low base attack and also HP, so it's definitely not usable. I'd say it's D tier. Now moving on to the 4-star options, you have the Dragon's Bane. It's going to give you elemental mastery and then it's going to increase your damage against opponents affected by Hydra or Pyro. Most of your opponents are hopefully going to be affected by Pyro with Emilie because of burn-in, so it's going to be a pretty achievable stat. And also the elemental mastery substat is not going to be like fully unusable. As I said before though, this is not really the weapon you'd want to use generally. You don't really want to go for elemental mastery weapons. You just want to build her with normal crit stats, and for that you just want to use a weapon that can help you with that, either attack, crit, or whatever. But elemental mastery weapons can work too, but they're definitely not going to be the best. So it's usable. I put it at like very low B tier. Well, it's the only one at B tier now, but it's going to be like very low B tier because it's usable, but it's like on the lower end of usable. You definitely don't really want to use it in my opinion. Broad type Star Glitter is just energy recharge, and then the passive is just gonna, it's kind of useless pretty much. It's just gonna increase your normal and charge attacks, which you'll never gonna use with Emilie. The energy recharge is not really necessary for Emilie too. Generally, you just want to get a couple from the substats and you're good. So going for like a full energy recharge substat on your weapon is definitely not recommended. I would put it at C tier probably. Actually D tier. It's definitely not the weapon you want to go for. Even if you want to go for an energy recharge weapon, this is not the weapon you should go for. We've got the Crescent Pike, it's just physical damage and then normal charge attacks, so it's going D tier. Blacklift Bow is just gonna be that crit damage, and then after defeating the enemy it's gonna increase your attack, but especially since she's not gonna be played off in field, this is gonna be a very hard weapon to trigger the passive. So essentially a lot of times you're just gonna be without passives. So yeah, the crit damage is not really gonna make up for it as much in my opinion. I'll probably put it like very low B tier too. That match is gonna be low base attack and then a crit rate substat. The passive is just gonna increase your attack if there are at least 2 opponents on the field. Usually there are 2 opponents on the field, so it's going to be a pretty easy passive to trigger. And if there are fewer opponents, only 1 opponent, then you're going to gain even more attack. So this weapon is going to be way more consistent. You're always going to be getting an attack bonus, and especially if you have refinements on it, it's going to be pretty good. So yeah, even though the base attack is kind of low, but just for the attack bonus, I'd say it's going to be a very good weapon. And the crit stat is going to help you build Emilie a lot. So I'd say it's probably one of her best weapons. I'll put it like A tier. We've got the Lithic Spear, high base attack, and then also attack as a substat. And if you have more leeway characters on your team, it's going to give you attack and also crit rate. Having leeway characters on your team can be kind of hard to even get like 1 stack because Emilie herself is not really from leeway, so maximum is going to be like 3 stacks, and it's going to be kind of not the easiest to have them. Maybe like Ben and Jean-Li, but other than that I can't really think of many characters that are going to be from leeway that works with Emilie. So yeah, I wouldn't really say it's a very good weapon. With good stacks it's going to be pretty good, but I don't really see many teams that can suffice that. So I'd say it's gonna be B tier, high B tier, but it's not too good. Favonius, just the energy recharge, also Favonius passive. I mean, since she's gonna be played as a sub DPS, that weapon can be good because it's gonna be more of like supportive. So I wouldn't really say it's completely out of the question. But as I said before, you don't really want to use energy recharge weapons on Emilie. You just want to build her as your normal sub DPS to deal damage. So yeah, just the energy recharge is not recommended. But if you need energy recharge on her and you want to build her with energy recharge, Earth Infovonius is probably going to be your better option. So I'd say C tier. I wouldn't put at D tier, just like the prototype, but it's still not really the weapon you want to use in my opinion. So yeah, C tier it is. We've got the Royal Spear, a high base attack for 4-star and then also attack as a substat. The passive is just going to be completely useless, so it wouldn't really be a super good weapon to use on Emilie. I put it like very low B tier too, just for the high base attack and the attack substat, but probably don't want to use this weapon. Maybe high, yeah, actually high C tier. It pretty much doesn't have any passive. Dragon Spine Spear is just physical damage, so it's going D tier. Kitten Cross Spear, it's going to be high base attack and then elemental mastery, which is pretty good. The passive is just going to increase your skill damage by a little bit, and then it's going to give you some energy. It's not too bad, but as I said before, elemental mastery weapons are in general not it, so I wouldn't really put it higher than Dragon's Bane. I put it just next to it. It's a little better just for the high base attack, but in general wouldn't really recommend using. So yeah, it's here. Got the catch if you have it, just energy recharge, and then it's going to increase your elemental burst damage and crit rate. It's got a mess, so probably like very low C tier. Wavebreaker's Fin, super high base attack for a 4-star, and then attack as a substat, which is pretty good. And then it's just going to give you elemental burst damage bonus based around your team's energy. Depends on the team, it's going to be very inconsistent, but in general the weapon's not bad, mainly for the super high base attack for 4-star. So I'll put it like pretty high B tier, probably the best at B tier here. We've got the Moon Piercer, the elemental mastery, and the high base attack, just like the Kitten Cross, but the passive is just going to create that leaf that can give you attack. Might be a little hard to get it because Emilie's going to be off field, but it can also be a supportive weapon. So I'd say it's pretty good. I'll also put it like high B tier probably because it's going to give you some attack. If not for you, it's going to give attack to the main DPS on field, which is not going to be bad in most cases. Or you can just pick it up with Emilie, fun and wait. But yeah, the elemental mastery substat is still not as good, so I wouldn't really put it higher than B tier, but it's pretty cool at B tier. So I'll put it like mid-high B tier, somewhere around that. We've got the Missive Wind Spear, average base attack for a 4-star, attack as a substat, and then it's going to increase your attack and elemental mastery from the passive, which is pretty good. Especially if you have refinements on this weapon, it's going to be super good. So yeah, honestly, I'd say it's like very low A tier. It's one of the best weapons you can use for the lack of weapons because she likes attack a lot, and this weapon is going to give you a bunch of attack. And for 4-star, it's going to be worth it to be at A tier in my opinion. Very low A tier as I said, but definitely A tier worthy in my opinion. So yeah, Ballad of the Fords, average base attack and then a crit rate stat. The passive is just going to increase your elemental mastery when there are different elemental types in your party, which is not really the best. Just for that crit rate substat, I'd probably put at B tier, but in general, it's not the weapon you'd want to use unless you don't really have many other weapons. Right, for reward, high base attack, but it's just HP and stuff like that. So I'd probably say it's D tier. Exact same thing with the dialogues of the Desert Sages. So I'd say it's D tier. For the final 4-star weapon, we have the Prospector's Drill. It's going to have a higher base attack as a 4-star, then also attack as a substat. And then when you get healed and you use your elemental skill and burst, it's going to give you some attack and also elemental damage bonus, which is super good on Emilie, up to a maximum of 3 stacks. So it's going to be pretty decent, especially with the refinements. The high base attack and attack is going to be enough already, and then some extra damage bonus and attack from the passive, which is always pretty good. You just need to be healed to activate the passive, so you're going to need a healer that can heal you. Either a healer that can heal you like when you're off field, or a healer that can you just step in. For example, if it's Bennett, you'll want to step in with Emilie in his healing effects, and you're going to gain 1 stack, which is not really the best. So generally, you'd want a healer that can heal you when you're off field, which you have a lot of. You can probably use one of them with Emilie. Alright, so now finally moving on to your 5-star options. First of all, we have Staff of Homa, average base attack for 5-star, but it's still pretty high compared to any 4-star. You have crit damage as a substat, and it's going to give you a lot of it. And then it's going to give you attack from the passive based around your HP. And it's also going to increase your HP. This is always just going to be working on everyone pretty much. It's not really going to be the best on Emilie, but for the lack of better weapons, I'll put it at S tier to be honest. It doesn't really have any requirements or anything like that. You just slap it in, it's just going to increase your HP with some extra maybe HP substats. It's going to give you a lot of attack, and with the high base attack and crit damage, it's going to be better than all of the weapons here. So yeah, Staff of Homa is S tier for Emilie. Skyward Spine, super high base attack, but it's going to give you an energy recharge substat, and then some crit rate from the passive. It's not really terrible, but the energy recharge substat and the passive is pretty much completely useless except for the small crit rate. I wouldn't really say it's a good weapon, so I'll put it like pretty high B tier maybe. Vortex Vanquisher is just like an attack stat stick, especially if you have a shield. is going to be super good. It's just going to give you attack from the substat and then also more attack if you have a shield. Even without a shield, it's going to be pretty decent, but with a shield, it's going to be like S tier. The thing is, Emilie is not going to be shielded most of the time, so it's not really going to be achievable. So I'll put it like A tier, probably the most realistic scenario. I'll put it like pretty high A tier because it's still going to give you a super high amount of attack. The Jade Wing Spear, that crit rate, and then it's going to increase your attack, just pretty much everything you need for Emilie, and also it's going to have a super high base attack. The thing is, you probably won't really be able to maintain many stacks for a long time because you're going to gain them on hit and they're only going to last for 6 seconds. So you're also never going to get the full damage bonus, but it's still a pretty good weapon just for the crit rate and the high base attack. I'll probably also put it at very high A tier, probably the best at A tier here. You have the Calamity Queller, super high base attack, well, the highest in the game. It's also going to give you attack from the substat, which is pretty good. This is a small substat, but that's expected. The passive is just going to give you elemental damage bonus, which is pretty good. And after you use your skill, it's going to be increasing your attack. And if you're off field, which Emilie is, it's also going to increase your attack even more. So it's literally just like a whole bunch of attack and some elemental damage bonus. And it's going to work perfectly. It's just going to give you much more attack than any other weapon. So it's definitely going to S tier 2. Right now, this is the best weapon you can use on Emilie compared to all of these weapons. Just huge numbers of attacks. So if you have it, you definitely want to use it on Emilie. In Golf of Lightning, just that energy recharge substat, which is not really as good, but it's going to increase your attack based around your energy recharge. So it's not really terrible, I guess. I put it like lower side of A tier. The weapon itself is going to give you a huge amount of energy recharge. With some substats and stuff like that, it's going to be a cool attack increase, and with the high base attack, it's going to be usable. So I'll put it like very low A tier probably. Or actually I put it high B tier. That's probably the right place because you don't really need that much energy recharge, so it's kind of a wasted stat. We've got Staff of the Scarlet Sands, low base attack for a 5-star, and then crit rate as a substat, but it's a huge substat of crit rate. The passive is just going to increase your attack based around your elemental mastery. You won't really be building that much elemental mastery on Emilie, so this weapon is not really going to be all of that. I'd say it's probably like high B tier 2, just for the huge crit rate substat. The base attack is low for a 5-star, but it's still not bad, and you're probably going to gain some attack, so it's not too bad. It's definitely usable, but definitely not the best weapon, so I'd say high B tier 2. We've got Arlecchino's weapon, high base attack and then crit rate as a substat. That's good, I guess, but the passive is just some damage bonus, and you're not going to gain the full of it, just the bond of life and stuff like that. Emilie is just not going to be able to use it. So the weapon as a whole is not going to be perfect, but just for the super high base attack, I'd say it's going to be pretty decent. So I'll put it like low A tier 2. And then finally, we have her signature weapon. Base attack is not really that high, but it's like average for a 5-star weapon. And it's going to give you a medium crit rate substat too, but the passive is just going to increase your attack like flat. And then it's just going to give you a bunch of damage bonus and energy from the rest of the passive. Honestly, it's not that great of a weapon for Emilie, especially as like a signature weapon. It's definitely going to be the best here, so just let me put that S tier before I continue talking. It's going to be better than any other weapon, but considering that Emilie is probably going to be one of the very few characters who can even use this weapon because it's just related to burning, it really isn't that much better than something like the Calamity Queller or even the A tier weapons. Again, it's the best, but it's not that much better. So if you have something like the Calamity Queller, Homa for example, you should probably not use this weapon at all, or even one of the A tier weapons, to be honest, especially like top A tier. I wouldn't really recommend going for this weapon. Not many characters can use it unless it's like a very specific team comps and you don't really want to go for that as an investment. But yeah, that was the video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. Peace.